Today on the Dirty Podcast, we have an OG Solana hackathon participant and winner who is now co-founder and CEO of Convergence. Welcome, Ube.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, of course. Before we jump into Convergence, why don't you give me the TLDR on yourself and maybe your journey into crypto?
I started in blockchain and developing on top of Bitcoin back in 2014, on top of a protocol called collaterals. Back then, we're trying to build a decentralized banking system, a lending and borrowing protocol. We had to build a lot of the functionality of chain and just use Bitcoin as a proof existing kind of layer. After that, I guess I became a Web2 consultant, just helping a few hedge funds integrate into exchanges, fix APIs. I had to go to Milan even to work for a few hedge funds there. Then came back to the States. I became mostly a Web2 consultant for the most part.
Okay. There you've done building on Ethereum and you've got a lot of experience with hedge funds. And so I guess that culmination makes what you're building with Convergence in your position actually quite powerful. Because a lot of what Convergence is bringing like institutional liquidity on chain.
Yes, initially we set out to build an OTC standard for a lot of these protocols to adopt. So we're still set out to build that or to pioneer that. We need to open source that protocol and make it seamless for everybody to just use us. We're not a DEX ourselves. We're not an exchange. We don't compete with exchanges. What we are is pretty much an interface for institutions to do peer-to-peer trades with one another. Anyone that wants trading size with one another OTC, they will negotiate the block or the trade on our platform or our protocol. And then once for example, let's say you're a taker, you wanna buy $1 million worth of an option or a perpetual contract, long or short, or a call or put, and you send a request. Multiple market makers or liquidity providers call you back. You choose the best request out of all of them, and then we mint the contract on the underlying venue that you choose. If you don't have a preference for the venue, eventually what we'll be doing is choosing the best venue with the most rebates for you. But obviously, a lot of institutions already have a preference for the risk engine that they want to do. They already want just to farm the specific incentives or rewards that they believe will hold value for longer. So yeah, similar to Paradigm RFQ, which is the request for quote for Deribit. Then eventually they expanded into other changes. So we're pretty much similar to them, but for DeFi. Initially for DeFi protocols. So we set out to build on Solana with side options, HXRO. We may be integrating with a few other protocols as well on Solana. And what we want to do is integrate with a framework that any new DeFi developer can use, and so that they're integrated with us from the get-go. What's pretty common and frequent is that a lot of these protocols build innovative DeFi primitives, but they don't think of what happens when they reach a certain size, where they will always be need a printed functionality like us.
Okay. So I know for those that were listening, the HXRO is the Hero
Yes.
Network, and then I options, and those guys came together and are working on kind of our
Uh,
modify as a partnership. So you guys are working with them. Is Convergence another piece of the pie in that you've kind of got Armada is token centered, Hero is sort of derivatives risk engine centered, and now you guys are going to be like institutional liquidity? Is it like, are you guys three separate pieces, or is it more like you're making use of their stuff? Can you help me with sort of
we
like the framework or the
we
setup?
are composing on both of them, and yeah, we may talks about contributing to Armada as well. But yes, we're composing. We're as of right now, we're just composing HXRO and side options. What they're building for Armada, it's very ambitious. We'll be contributing soon enough.
Interesting. Okay, before we jump more into the protocol stuff, can you tell me about how big the team is, where you guys are located, kind of anything you can divulge there?
We're a pretty decentralized team. A couple of the founders are in. My other two co-founders are in North America as well. One of us is in New York, and the other one is in Vancouver.
It's very spread out.
Yeah. As far as the rest of the engineering team, they're in Europe. Yeah.
Nice. And then so you guys raised as a SAFT, you were saying, which for anybody is a simple agreement for future tokens.
Yeah.
I had to Google that, but it makes a lot of sense. Can you talk to me about the raise? Your runway must be good because recently.
It happened about we closed around about 8 months ago now. We just made the announcement about
Okay,
4 months ago.
nice.
We just wanted to align it with our releases. We're on mainnet now, on private mainnet. We're onboarding institutions on the platform. to see liquidity, going through that process, building the market maker infrastructure for it, bots and whatnot, trying to create a retail program for the institutional network or the RFQ network.
So now, when you say a retail program, does that mean like you want to have a service you can offer to traders?
Well, so RFQs are pretty performant on two sides. Either an institutional side, they're performant for complex trades, and that may come for institutional side, or that may come from microtransactions. Microtransactions will be very similar to copying entire portfolios or doing multiple trades at once, right? Baskets. And so what we build is designed to price these baskets. And so something that I was curious on introducing into the ecosystem is the ability to copy entire portfolios from top users of some of these bots, right? So we built another bot that is able to track the portfolios of these performing bots. If these bots are sitting on EVM, that could leverage Solana's finality to settle on those trades faster on Solana, right?
Right, have to be a wrapped asset on Solana to take advantage
Yeah,
of it.
yeah. So
And so this would be a retail focused
yeah,
tool in addition to Convergence, which is essentially B2B or institution to
yes,
institution.
and everything will be using our RFQ. Cool. So it's another piece of the puzzle for us, and that's something that we'll be launching soon, and it will have its own token on Solana.
Before we jump into the token talks, because I love a good token speculation, can we back up and can you explain RFQs for dummies? And maybe try to relate it to other derivatives based tools or other ways that they may be settled.
Yes, we're an RFQ in the traditional sense, an RFQ. So let's say you're a taker. You're trying to, for example, sell $1 million of a liquid asset, like let's say, or something that you cannot trade in that side.
Something that's not super liquid.
Well, something that by selling in bulk, you will impact the price. Uh, you
Right.
will you will have significant slippage on. So what can you use to mitigate that? And so what these electronic RFQs do is pretty much create a venue where people can do this in an electronic format. For us, we're introducing this same piece into the blockchain space. So instead of jumping into these Telegram groups and then selling, "Hey, I'm trying to X $1 worth of this," and then people DM you, spam you, and then you select the best code out of all of them. We're just bringing it to on a protocol format so that whenever you request to sell or buy something in bulk, just submit a request, I guess, give you the best code, and then both of you settle once you agree on a price.
So it's like an innovation on OTC. It's fully on chain.
Fully on chain, and it's partially collateralized. So one of the pain points a lot of folks have is by fully collateralizing a trade, it's not very capital efficient, right? You lose on a lot of there's an opportunity cost attached to it, especially on the derivative side. So something that we built on top of it was some very simple risk engine, especially on chain, since we're building on Solana. So it's a very simple risk engine that its main priority or its main function is to act as a penalty system. So whenever you buy or sell something, or whenever you submit a request for quote, you just partially collateralize. Whenever someone responds to you, they partially collateralize it. So what protocol does by collecting two deposits is just creating an incentive in case if somebody defaults. In case if you default, then the collateral that you defaulted goes back to the person that quoted you. So it acts as an incentive mechanism for these two counterparties to settle on the price they prompt, retaining that capital efficient
Interesting.
component or a basis trade, a long spot short perp kind of position. For example, one of the main pain points why options hasn't gained traction in the space is because it's very capital inefficient. You have to fully collateralize every single trade, and that presents a challenge compared to what you can get on CeFi. It just can't compete.
Have you explored zero dated futures offered by Hero Network? And are you thinking to integrate them into your platform?
So when integrated with dexterity, we should be able to offer everything that they have. It's something that I see. Yes.
And before we go any further, I want to introduce the first sponsor of the Dirty Diggler podcast, none other than my guys, Zeta Markets. The fastest perp DEX in Solana and crypto. So good, it's better than sex. Centralized exchanges, that is. And now, thanks to a partnership with D-Bridge, you can one-click deposit from any EVM chain directly into Zeta. That is some good degeneracy right there. Oh yeah? And what's that? Can you smell what I'm smelling? That's right. I'm thinking a token is coming soon. Q1, Q2, who knows? The team keeps it pretty tight-lipped. But with the Z-Score underway, make sure you're trading. Make sure you're getting that volume up. This one's going to be a real doozy. Talk to me about your Dutch East India Banner company, and tell me a bit about like the institutional side. Like, have you had a lot of interest from previous contacts from the times you spent in hedge funds, wanting to come here and make markets via the RFQs?
It seems like trading firms are very interested in rewards from other protocols. So for Dutch East India, I guess Traders Guild started out as a way to detect bad actors in the space. So in 2021,
Hmm.
you had a lot of folks asking for grants for these protocols and not delivering anything. And so what I did was put together a lot of, I guess, protocol founders in order to detect this bad act. So yeah, people were giving grants, not delivering anything. It was a bull market, and so eventually we all started suffering the same problems of onboarding market makers. I guess market makers usually will take, like any other trading firm, will take some time to integrate into each protocol. There was no interface or one common interface for them to just integrate with and just deploy capital into any protocol, right? Or make markets on any protocol. Each protocol has a different set of interface, different set of code base methods. So yeah, and so we all had the same pain point, and so we started onboarding more market makers into the group chat as a way to help out any protocol that may join. Eventually, a lot of these market makers and hedge funds attracted allocators, and so it became like a positive flywheel network in which you have DeFi protocols giving out incentives or trying to reach deals with these market makers. This in turn, this hedge funds and market makers will be interested in them.
Okay, I want to know more about like, so you're building Convergence. I want to relate Convergence in a way that you explain to me kind of like the end goal. Like, is it Convergence is offering this derivatives product, right? You can do spot, you can do perpetuals, you can do options, and you're offering it in a new vehicle via the RFQ. Now, is this Convergence becomes its own marketplace to facilitate it? Or do you go to places like Drift, Zeta, Psi Options, and I'm a user and I go to Drift, Zeta, and Psi Options because I want to trade perpetuals, I want to trade options, and when I go to selecting pairs, I may not know that I'm interacting with an RFQ. Like, where does the convergence model blend with the dApps that we see currently and presently? Like, what's the end state for convergence for you?
So right now, let's say your institution A, institution B. If we want to do a trade off the order book of Zeta, off the order book of PageXRO, I will probably just select a counterparty when Convergence, because on Convergence we have the ability to whitelist addresses. Um, let's say
Okay.
I only want to trade with certain institutions like DRW, Jump, GCP. I just select them as counterparties and I just send a request for code for them. They will receive it on their terminals, receive notification or email, and they will quote me back. I already know these counterparties are whitelisted, are KYC'd on my end. I will have no issues with that. And if I want to expand the pool with other KYC actors, we're even partnering, we're integrating with Hubbles Finance so that uh, they can just expand
Okay.
they can just send it to any KYC actor. And once we agree on the price for the trade, we then mint the block on the risk engine of choice.
And then it comes down to like, is it a spot trade? Is it a perp trade? Is it an options trade?
So for swaps, there's no need for an underlying menu, but for derivatives, yes, there is. We will need to partner with every single derivative protocol, ideally in Solana.
And so I'm an institution and I'm tired of picking up the phone and doing OTC deals. I find out about convergence and the request for quote. Do you have to have another institution to target, or can you put an order in like it's an order book?
There, a lot of institutions are comfortable with just trading with anyone, and so they're gonna have that ability. For those institutions, the KYC compliance is very important. They're also gonna have that ability to only select or target parties that they already know, and just inputting they're putting their address on their address book, or just selecting on permission pools for convergence. Let's say.
So it's about capital efficiency for the institutions, right? Being able to trade assets without incurring large amounts of slippage. But does this add depth or takeaway depth from order books, because it's sort of removing orders that maybe would be sitting on an order book. Would you counter that saying that's not true? It's just another avenue.
It's another avenue, but at the end of the day, the contract gets minted on the underlying venue, so it increases the liquidity. Eventually, we're probably gonna have like iceberg orders there, adding more depth into the underlying order books. Right now, we're just focusing on meeting the institutional demand on our end. So,
That's super cool. That's super cool. So the disruption is disruption to OTCs and the old school way of doing it by bringing this method on
well,
chain.
it's still through on blockchain, right? You have all of these OTC Telegram chats all over. So it's like a blockchain is supposed to be a disruptive new, the next step in finance, and we're going back to the old ways of just chatting with your counterparty and doing OTC. Yeah.
I like the socialized element you discussed, because that can exist on chain too, right? Most of these big players probably have several wallets, and I'm sure all of them are known. The big players all know the other players'
Yeah.
wallets, and they're probably labeled. And so if you have this sort of on-chain system and this quasi order book, you sort of have like a social element where you have a rating. Like, are you good at following up on your end of the spectrum? Can you be hit on that kind of thing?
There's a possibility for credit, right? The ability to do a pause trade settlement.
And then, so I talked to Drift, and I've noticed that Drift has added a few products which are kind of like a market making vault, where users can put their funds into vaults, and then market makers can kind of trade with their assets. And then again, it's kind of like a score based thing. And then there's also like the liquidation side, and users being able to be involved in that side. Is there a future where users can get involved in some manner of this RFQ institutional trade?
Yes, we're developing a few pools, and we have a points program for that as well, coming out shortly. There will be ways to help out seed liquidity, especially on a lot of the a lot of institutions were interested in or some were interested in microcaps. We're starting out with onboarding the smaller hedge funds first. They're the ones who probably gonna find the most in the latest, I guess, market. And then before we onboard, I guess the Wintermuses of the world. Yeah,
Yeah.
because those guys are
And the
looking for more, I guess, more liquidity.
nice. All right, it's a good time to segue back into the token. So you've explained to me the product. You explained to me how users can be involved, how it's mostly for institutions. Why token, and what does the token benefit for Convergence? And then you mentioned that you're going to be launching the Converge bot token first. Can you kind of explain maybe the latter and then the former, and sort of how they come together into your ecosystem?
For convergence, the token is going to be defined based on certain KPIs. So the token needs to make sense, right? Depending on how the end user ultimately uses us. Something that we're introducing with ConvergeBot, eToro's popular program or popular investor program that they have, and a lot of people are going to be able to copy portfolios or trades from more successful traders, right? From top traders in the space, especially for a lot of these bots like Unibot, and maybe Flux being or Bankboy in the case of Solana.
Yeah.
People will be able to copy their portfolios upon one click, right? So what I will do for the RFQ, RFQs are very good at complex trades, right? Multi-leg trades. So if you want to buy or sell three, four, five, six spots in one go, in one click, the RFQ is designed for that. And so institutions will be able to pick up the other side of the spectrum, right? You will submit a trade, and they will just fill you without any slippage, without you doing it one by one manually. That's one attractive features that we can introduce or we can do with an RFQ system like Convergence, right? And we're trying to introduce it with ConvergeBot. As far as the token goes, yeah, we're still designing the tokenomics around ConvergeBot. Maybe we'll look something like Unibot to incentivize usage, but at the end of the day, it's going to be designed towards the KPS. There was a lot of talk about adopting over to boarding escrow, especially since we plan to be open source, create an OTC standard for a lot of these new DeFi protocols coming into the space or DeFi protocols coming into the space, which will make sense, especially for controlling the fees and penalties within Convergence itself. Uh, Penalties of not filling the trade, for example. I spoke briefly about the penalty system that we had, controlling the percentage of for example, your collateral
Hmm.
requirement. It's something that you vote
Hmm.
for, and you make it specific to
So
each protocol, right?
users of the platform, institutional traders, market makers need to hold, X amount of convergence, and maybe they can stake it. And it's sort of like a proof of stake where if you're a bad actor, you get slashed kind of thing.
It could be, but holding the tokens just so that they can control the penalties and collateral requirements on their own protocol. So let's say I'm a derivative protocol, I'm a perpetual protocol, very confident in my risk engine. I want a whole convergence so that I can control the collateral requirement when people choose me as the venue to trade perpetual zone, or institutions choose me to trade perpetual zone. So they can vote on this.
Is that based on like rewards emissions, like being able to give kickbacks to traders coming to you?
Can
Like,
vote on these parameters on based on
I
governance
see.
tokens.
So it'd be kind of like a curve style flywheel where it's like those who hold the most curve can delegate the
Yeah,
most to their
yeah,
pools.
pretty much. It's ideally we were thinking of, but again, we'll know for sure once we have the engagement in place. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I used to be above of the mimetic that useless government tokens are just that, and then have changed my tune over the last year because if you're putting a product out and you want to be decentralized, one of the only ways to do that is to have a token, and you allow the market to decide who gets to hold it. Hopefully you can do a fair launch, and then you allow people to decide, what a fee is going to be. Is one market maker taking too much, like being able to sway the vote in other direction. Now, there's a lot to that, and I'm no expert by any means, but I am always happy when I hear protocols coming out that they have tokens. And for me as a user, speculator, enjoyer, doesn't make sense for me to have too many conversations with people that aren't doing tokens, because it's sort of, there's no way for me to be involved. Like, I can't invest in it. Like, it's harder for me to participate. It's just like, oh, that's nice. It's good. I appreciate it. But anyways, long story short, Dirt's pro token. Happy to hear it. Um, Before we kind of wrap this up, I have this thing where I want to know more about hackathons, and so I thought I kind of want to know more about your wormhole experience, and maybe tell me like what you see what you see that could be changed in hackathons moving forward.
Solana Hacker has this cool borrow from. Uh, yeah, it brings a lot of talent into the space and a quiet, like ETH Global kind of ambience where people can actually develop. I love the ETH Global, for example, hackathons as well, just because it's calm, it's quiet. You can just go there, stay for the entire day, just code it, do some research, and then on the third hour is when you're in the zone, right? So yeah, now you can start you can start building from until midnight or past that, right? So yeah, it takes some time to ramp up until you get into the zone. So that kind of ambience is a must. I really like it. Aside from that, they're too short too, right? What this online
Hmm,
hackathons offer is the ability to plan for a product and actually ship something that has product market fit. Because what a lot of these short duration span hackathons have uh, not going for them. It's that you cannot build much in that short duration. Whereas in a month long duration hackathon like Ignition, Wormhole, I think it was a Sandstorm one, you find so
truth.
much good innovation, things that haven't been developed before. Maybe highly experimental, could be exploitable, but it's interesting.
Yeah, no, I love it. I'm enamored by it, and I think I'm planning to go to the Mountain Dow one in Salt Lake City this year, just sort of to see what it's like. Like, not a coder, not a part of a team, but I'm vastly intrigued by going and seeing what people are starting to build. I think it's very exciting times.
Yes.
All right, why don't you tell the good people where they can find you on Twitter, Convergence's Twitter?
Anyone can find me at UWECE. Yeah, you can follow us at Convergence RFQ.
Awesome. Before I let you go, what I always like to ask people: what's the one thing that's kept you sane building through the bear market?
I guess in the bear market, people are more easy to approach. So just been going to the conferences
Ah.
and meeting more fun. So it's always good.
Completely agree. People's guards are
Yeah,
down.
yeah, exactly.
Let the hunger come
Exactly.
through.
It's the best time to
I
build,
love it.
connect, and gym also. It's what's
Yeah.
been keeping me sane. I've been losing a lot of weight if you ask people around me.
Good on you. Awesome, man. Okay. Well, thanks again for coming on the Dirty Podcast, and I'm sure we'll stay in contact.
Thank you so much for having me.